The move to redesign some denominations of the Naira came as a shock to many Nigerians. Even though President Muhammadu Buhari and the governor of Nigeria's central bank, Godwin Emefiele, have argued that the move will favor Nigeria and its failing economy, some experts have failed to see how the strategy will, for example, stabilize the Naira against the dollar. We all know the Naira is taking serious beating currently as it is at an all-time low. There is also the case of around 80% of the Naira circulating outside the system and the pledge by the Nigeria's leading anti-corruption agency, the EFCC, to clamp down on hoarders. The question is, how will all of this have a trickling effect on Nigerians? This will be the focus of the program tonight. Hello and welcome to Daily Politics. I am Hamza Idris. We are joined by Joseph Ago. He is a political and economic analyst here in the studio. We are also joined virtually by Dr. Dapel Zuhumnan. He is a development economist. He joins us from the United Kingdom. Welcome to the program, gentlemen.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, Dr. Dapel, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Welcome. Good. We will take a short break now, and when we return, the conversation starts. Stay with us. Welcome back. Joseph, many Nigerians were shocked when the CBN governor announced that they are going to redesign some denominations of the Naira. Were you surprised, or you anticipated something like this as an economist?
No, I was shocked as most Nigerians. I mean, even the finance minister was shocked. She was taken by surprise. I mean, she was not in the loop as to that move by the central bank. So it came as a shock.
But he said it's part of, their responsibility. The CBN Act stipulates that from time to time they should change, the design of the Naira for some obvious reasons. So why? Is it that Nigerians are skeptical, or they don't trust some of the things that those in charge of our monetary policies are doing?
Redesign of currencies is something that should be routine. I mean, previous central bank governors, for example, there was a central bank governor that had installed some new features on the 100 Naira notes. We saw the central bank also introducing polymer notes in place of paper notes in the past. We saw commemorative 50 Naira notes when Nigeria turned 50. So we have seen these sort of redesign in the past, but for us, we weren't expecting that in the dying days or in the last days of this current administration, they would explore the redesign of the Naira notes option.
Okay. Dr. Dapel, if you are with me here, what was your impression about the change in the design of some of these denominations, 200, 500, 1,000?
Well, it's sometimes suspected, and like in a democratic setting like ours, and in the tension lead up to elections, you always expect the unexpected. What came to my mind was the central bank has an intent that it was a 13-page press briefing outlining the reasons why they want to change the currencies. But looking at the content of the communique or the briefing, I'm not fully convinced that that had exposed the original intent of the central bank. For instance, they say there are over 80% of the cash in circulation, and they want to mop it. So for instance, if somebody lodging 1 million Naira old notes, and the next day he withdraws 1 million Naira new notes, we still have the same volume of money in circulation. So I don't see how that is a way to deal with that. A convincing way to me to change the value of to change the design of a currency and introduce is if the government central bank came across a quality of paper that can last long in circulation and want to replace it with the one that is easily worn out or damaged to save costs of managing the volume of currency. That's convincing. And another convincing one, like the case in 2004, the Denski Bank, then it was Northern Bank, it was robbed 26 million pounds. Over that amount in cash was stolen from the bank, and the authorities have to quickly print, change the design on the currency and print them to render worthless the amount that were stolen by the robbers. So these are convincing reasons to me as to why central bank should change design. Okay. Another one too may be the fact that they want to fight counterfeiting.
Yes, fighting counterfeiting, one, taking money away from bandits, two, yes, then, you know, attacking hoarders from where they did not expect. Yes, are some of the reasons advanced by the CBN governor. Do you think these are also, they will be able to achieve this? They will be able to starve maybe bandits from having access to money by just changing the design of the NAIRA?
Okay, you see, first of all, you need to understand what is money. Money is not needed for what it is. It's needed for what it can do. Okay. Money is not a rice that you just boil it in the house and eat it. You use it to spend. So these bandits can still spend it in the economy. Now, the way the central bank recalls all notes, try to understand how central bank standard recall all notes. Like they would say, okay, the old ones and the new ones will be circulating alongside up to a point where the old ones would no longer be legal tender. But if you still have the old one, you can walk into a designated bank or the central bank lodge it, and you will be given new notes in return. So these bandits, if they have the cash with them, they are spending it buying things. So they will still find a way to infuse this cash into the system if they are not doing it already.
Yeah. Then what about the counterfeits? Is it possible to actually solve this problem by redesigning the NAIRA?
They say the criminals, so it can help reduce, but it can't solve. I walk into a convenience store and I saw a perforated pound note stick to the wall. And I asked the guy, I say, even in UK, the pound sterling, it's been counterfeited. His reply was, the criminals are always one step ahead. So no currency is above counterfeiting, including the US dollar. Stringent effort and security measures can help reduce the rate at which that is done. It cannot eliminate it to zero level. I've never seen that happen elsewhere. If they introduce new notes, the criminals will quickly get all of that new note, putting it and devise way to reproduce it in a counterfeit way.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Joseph, you heard what Dapel said, that it's very difficult to you know, resolve access to funds by bandits, you know, hoarding and counterfeiting by, you know, sundry criminals. So what do you think the CBN should have tell Nigerians to convince them that, yes, this is the time to actually redesign the NAIRA? Can they just say, we are bound to be changing it from time to time and just stop at that instead of giving some reasons that are being challenged by experts like you?
I think there are fundamental issues that the central bank should really address. One is the gap between the exchange rate on the parallel market and what we see on the streets. I mean, the gap is very, very wide. So as much as possible, the CBN should also should have done that before exploring the
to solve fundamental problem. It's like they are now addressing the minor instead of the major.
Exactly. Problem. So they should have addressed those fundamental issues. We also see the proliferation of BDCs. The central bank, in concert with other agencies of government, should also have addressed all of these fundamental issues. We have the reason, of course, the reason why the Naira is taking a beating is because we are not producing. So we are, the US dollars, for example, is in high demand than the Nigerian Naira, because foreign direct investment, for example, has suffered because of insecurity issues. The last security alert by the United States government has even done a lot at almost eliminating the possibility of foreign direct investment. So they should have handled some of these fundamental issues before exploring the redesign of the Naira, these Naira notes. For example, you asked the question, why is it that people don't trust the central bank?
Yes.
There are two fundamental issues that any government should seek to address. The first is public policy, and the second is public relations.
Okay.
Public policy, what I mean is how you implement your programs. How you craft and implement your programs. We have very beautiful ideas in Nigeria, but
the approach to implementing
implementing is always a problem. Then public relations. Most times, in the bid to implement some of these policies and programs, the average Nigerian is not carried along. There's not enough information around what the policy direction of the government. For example, the central bank's arguments that the redesign will help the Naira.
How?
It doesn't. If you're not going to address production, we're still going to come back to that point where already the Naira is already. At this rate, we'll get to maybe, God forbid, 1,000 Naira to $1 by the end of this year, because we are failing to really carry the people along. A lot of people a lot of Nigerians, for example, need dollars to get goods, raw materials.
Almost everything.
We need dollars, for example, to buy services, to pay for some services online, to get, maybe even get an education or stuff like that.
To import that, pharmaceuticals.
Exactly.
Everything, yeah.
So there is that huge desire to acquire the US dollars, for example, because, the US dollars is the currency of the world. But some of these reasons why there is that high demand for the US dollars, we could have, by public policy, we could have tackled them, and there wouldn't be that unnecessary pressure on Naira. But all of these that the central bank is doing,
it's cosmetic of sorts.
Just going to be cosmetic.
Yes, Dapel, there is this argument that a lot of money in circulation outside the financial system is dirty. In terms of the credibility of the money, that is not legal money. How do you determine that money in circulation is clean in terms of its, intrinsic and face value?
Well, that's quite difficult to do, I would say. But you see, they say money is at the root of all evil there is. Drugs, human trafficking, guns, all rotates around. So when cash is a banking system, or it doesn't traceable payment channels, that is when these criminal activities. Some politicians can just buy the mandate of a politician to step down. Imagine that these transactions don't go through. The law needs to change them. So it's difficult to detect and say which money is this because it rarely passes through the payment system. It's only anecdotal evidences we have of people taking photos and videos and posting them online. But I firmly believe what former EFCC chairman said, Malanu Ribatu, that most Nigerian businesses are financed with dirty money. I believe him.
Now,
Dirty
look at
money in
it.
this sense, like you said, it's not earned through legitimate means, that is looted from the public treasury.
But the other argument by CBN is that they will be able to mop up some of these funds from the streets back to, banks. I mean, back to the central bank. Yeah.
See, I will believe that argument if the CBN says when you lodge in your money, you are not allowed to withdraw it until after 2, 3, or 5 years. I don't think central bank would say or do that because that would be infringing that person carrying that money is carrying illegitimate money. So except the CBN say when you lodge 1 billion, you will not withdraw it. Then you have lessened the amount of money in circulation by that 1 billion. But if the person lodging 1 billion today in old notes and the next day he withdrew them in new notes, you still have the same volume of money in circulation. I mean, this logical, it has nothing to do with any deep thinking.
But do you agree that it will reduce inflation as they claim?
Honestly, the other way around, it may cause inflation in the short run. How can it? First of all, this is why it will not increase inflation. Because the old notes and the new notes carry the same purchasing power. Okay. So if I hand in 100 Naira notes and I'm paid back through withdrawal 100 Naira note and I go to the market, the same thing at the same time I buy with the old note, I'll buy with the new note. So it's never gonna lower inflation. And the reason I say it may cause inflation in the immediate aftermath is most people that hold dirty money, that hoard these monies, they'll start bringing them out and invest them in properties. They'll start buying houses, they'll start buying things, and spending rises and prices may follow suit in the immediate short run, but it will subside. You see, most of these bad numbers would start to fade immediately elections are over. You expect these things. It's like a heavy wind or a heavy flood is coming and it dig many things underneath, bringing along with it. Then at a point when the flood subsided, the dust begins to settle. But we would always expect this, especially in a fragile democracy.
Okay. Joseph, immediately after the announcement, we saw a spike in the demand for the dollar. And people are just bringing in dirty notes. You see the currency, smelling, and then they are rushing to bureau de change. Is it normal that people keep money at home instead of keeping them in the bank? And can we qualify it to be a process of corruption?
No, Nigerians are heavy cash carriers. I mean, we don't do credit cards, we don't do cashless. We pay for all that we buy, most of what we buy with cash. And it's not surprising that the vast majority of Nigerians keep cash at home, maybe in a safe, maybe under their bed. And again, most Nigerians don't trust banks. Banks these days charging
unnecessary charges on deposits and withdrawals.
Depositors. So there is that mistrust in the banking system. So traditionally we handle cash. Then on top of that, we have a banking system that is not encouraging a lot of Nigerians to deposit monies with them. So we have a lot of cash outside the banking system in Nigeria.
Yes, Dapele, do you believe that the spike in the price of dollar is as a result of this announcement by the CBN? Because we've never seen geometric progression in terms of the purchasing power, of the dollar when compared with Naira, as we've seen in the last few days. It is now approaching 800 to $1. Is it as a result of this, or even if they didn't announce this, the Naira will definitely get there?
Okay, let me say two things. First, standard theory predicts that when there are two currencies in which people can hold their portfolios, if one currency becomes more risky than the other, they will switch their portfolios from a risky currency to a less risky currency.
Okay.
In this case, Naira is becoming riskier than the dollar. They consider the dollar more stable, and so they switch their portfolios. Now, in the course of doing that, they push up the demand of the Naira going down at the same time. But let me say the second thing on my mind.
Yeah.
When we talk of exchange rate, what exchange rate are we referring to? Currently, there are three exchange rates.
Yes.
One official by the central bank, which is roughly 400 to the dollar, and one by commercial banks, which is official but parallel, and then that's the black market exchange rate. So all this discussion is about the black market exchange rate.
Yes, because
Most
Nigerians get access to the dollar through that.
Pardon?
I said why people are concerned about the black market is that that is where even some people doing legitimate business, people in the production chain, they rarely get the dollar through the banks.
This is a bit of a failure of the system. Over 90% of dollar transaction for international businesses is not through Bureau de change. They don't have enough dollar to be paying billions of dollars transaction. It's for travelers needing like 1,000, 2,000, 4,000. The data is there, it proves it. But because this has to do with the people directly traveling, they would always complain online, and we see it. So if the central bank, as it has done in the past, but the way it is doing, people are abusing it. Like you want to travel, you get dollar at official rate, maximum amount, you travel and come back. But I tell you, a guy told me that in Kano airport, people get the PTA, that's for travel allowance at the official rate, and they quickly slip back into the economy, sell it at the black market.
Wow.
So these are the problems. And can I tell you, the destroyers of the dollar are the people, in quote, that seem to be above the law. In the last presidential conventions of political parties, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars were spent. Now, we don't know them to hold investments abroad that is earning them the dollar. Where are they getting these dollars? They cannot be questioned. They seem above the law. So they are the biggest destroyers of the value of the currency.
Very sad. Joseph, now we saw EFCC raiding Zone 4. They also went to Kano, attacking the Bureau de change people. Is it normal? Because these Bureau de change people, they are registered and they don't really get the dollar from the CBN anymore. Why now seeing them as the people that should be arrested?
I think the government created that monster. I mean, was it in 2021?
Yes.
There were over 500 Bureau de change applications. And that market is already saturated. I remember one time I was at a bank to go and get some dollars. Of course, it was I was getting it. So, but these people in the bank cannot. If, for example, let's say, for example, you want dollars. There are instances that, of course, I've seen in the banks, the bank people will call in the Bureau de change operator so that you can transact with him. The truth is, the rates, for example, let's say I want to change $1 at a bank, the rate is about 400 and let's say 450
or
60 naira. But it's going to pay me more if I go out there at Zone 4 or one of these validation operators and change it for 855 naira as it is today. So there is incentive for people to do round tripping because there is that gap between the bank rates, the parallel market.
But you think government can bridge the gap?
Of course. I mean, that is all that we have been saying these years. Try as much as possible to bridge the gap. We're not saying unify the exchange system, but if let's say the rate on the street is, let's say, 10 naira difference from what is gotten at the bank, there won't be that incentive for people to do round tripping with the US dollars.
The dollars that they got. Yeah, thank you very much. We will take a short break now, and when we return, the discussion continues. Don't go away.
That's great.
Welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is Daily Politics on Trust TV. Remember, you can follow the conversation on our various social platforms on Facebook, Instagram, and watch us live on YouTube. Today we are discussing the new redesigned NAIRA, who wins? Yes, and we have in the studio Joseph Ago, a political analyst, economist, and then Dr. Dapel Zuhomnan, who joins us via Zoom from the United Kingdom. Yeah, Joseph, who wins now this battle? Is it that the purchasing power of Nigerians will keep going down, or at a time it will rise?
Like we've seen with government policy, the proverbial grass will suffer. The rich will, in situations like this, the rich have the edge because they are the ones that would need the US dollars. The man in the village or the man that lives in the suburb really doesn't interact with the US dollars. Is all his purchases is done with the Naira. But with this uptick in the value of the Naira, of course, with static minimum wage, with static wage across even the private sector, the average Nigerian will suffer. I was at a printing shop, yesterday.
Okay, printing shop.
Printing shop yesterday. Between Friday and yesterday,
Tuesday,
that's yesterday, the prices have already started going up. So, and it's not funny, you're going into the market space with some assumptions, and you're getting negative feedback with a price increase. Some people cannot even restock their shops because they are calculating the difference between what the rates were 2 days ago and what the rates are. And now they'll be able to restock. Some of them are going for substandard products. There was a particular product, as a matter of fact, I was looking for, and in all the markets, that product was absent. And the feedback I got was a lot of the suppliers are not supplying because of the new trend with the dollars.
Yes. Dapel, if you go to Dawanau market in Kano, for instance, you see traders there. I mean, keeping up to 500 million naira, in cash in their shops. And you see others coming from villages with grains in exchange for this naira. I mean, what is the implication of this to these traders who don't really use the formal banking system in carrying out their transaction? And this is not only in Dawano. If you go to Dengi in Plateau, if you go to Patiskum if you go to Enugu, it is the same. You see people with hundreds of millions doing their business. What is the implication of this action by CBN vis-a-vis the timeline set for people to actually take all these all-nots to the banks?
Yeah, as far as I can tell, it's not illegitimate. There's no limit to how much cash you can hold at home.
Okay.
Even in the UK, want to withdraw up to £1 million cash, just send them, and the next day they make the money available for you as long
cash
as
in the UK.
Yeah. There's no limit to how much cash you can keep in the house. So, but if you keep cash in the house, there is advantage and there's disadvantage. The disadvantage is that thieves will come after you. The advantage is that you have a lot of bandwidth in terms of what you use your money for. Unlike we see the Russian oligarchs, when the sanctions was being slammed on Russia, they froze their accounts, their cash. They had no access to cash. But imagine they had cash stashed in their wardrobes or in their suitcases. They would not be trapped in one place. They will still be moving around. So those business people in carrying large sums of money, they find it very convenient way of trading. They find it the better way of not being fleeced by banks through short charges like the gentleman, the student.
Joseph, yes.
So, and they stole them, they bear the risk entirely. But I don't think it's anything criminal to keep cash. But like we said previously, there are many reasons why people keep cash. And one is they are using it to finance criminal activities.
I want to ask this. The UK is also changing the pounds, right? Following the death of the Queen and the emergence of the King. Did they put timeline as to when, if you didn't take the old notes to the bank, that you are going to lose it completely?
So they're very transparent about it, and they're sticking to their arrangement, how to phase out the old notes and introduce the new notes. They will not just start printing the new notes. Once the old notes go into the bank, they withdraw them and they don't bring them out. And when they go into the bank, and when you want to withdraw, apart from that, there is no complication. They would introduce the new note for the public to have a look by the end of this year, and towards the mid-2024, the new notes will be in circulation. They will co-circulate with the old notes.
Yeah.
And there will be a deadline to be announced, and that after that deadline, the old notes will no longer be a legal tender, but you can deposit it in a bank and get the same value.
Okay.
And there are designated banks to do that. So there's no cause for alarm. They assume that the money you are carrying with you is not illegitimate. It's except the case that I mentioned in Belfast, where there was bank robbery of over £26 million. And when £10 million was already infused into the economy through vending machines, the armed robbers did that. The almost 17 million that was not spent, the bank quickly went ahead and announced the serial numbers of those notes. And within 3 months, they redesigned, printed, and released new notes and rendered those ones worthless in the hand of the criminals.
Wow.
That was the only case you can quickly do that and make that difficult to work. But
why is the case?
Go ahead.
Why is the case different in Nigeria? Some people, even though it's not formal, they said it's like the president gave his nod for this just the way he did it in 1984, I think, if I'm not wrong, when he was military head of state, because that time there were allegations that politicians and other technocrats have stolen so much money and hid them, at home. Now, when he announced the change, he gave timeline, and it was so difficult for them to now take these monies to the bank. People are saying it is a repeat of what happened in 1984 that we are witnessing now, even though the government was short of saying they want to mop up money from hands of politicians. Do you agree, or you think the reasons they gave about addressing inflation, hoarding, and all that is enough?
So, you see, in as much as if the intent of the central bank is to crack down on criminals, that is noble, and everyone with good intention who wishes the country well should rejoice and support them for that. But what do we have in reality? Is that feasible? So there are some things we need to understand. There were some times I was talking about that corruption in Nigeria ran through a 5-man syndicate. It's beyond the president. The president, whoever he is, doesn't really run the show in the country. For instance, President Buhari does not know what happened in CBN unless he is told. He doesn't know what happened in NNPC or Federal Inland Revenue or Custom unless he is told. He doesn't run the show. It's a deep system that works. You see, the strong union between a politician and a bank CEO is dangerous for the system. And when you see a bank CEO or a banker switching banking and joining politics, it's digging money. The nation is bleeding and blood is dripping, and the few are feeding on this blood to be nourished. And once these wounds are healed, you take food off their table. And unfortunately, the beneficiaries of this status quo have the levers of power to change the rules to make things for the better. But it's unfortunately we find ourselves in that dilemma. So it is difficult for him to achieve that. If you want to move money abroad right now, there's limit to our call, just a click on a button, they speak to one CEO and they move. You cannot convince me that an accountant in the country stole 20, 10, 100 billion without the consent of a bank CEO. The bank CEOs know. EFCC is doing to fight corruption, but if they want to raise their game, they should start going after bank CEOs.
Okay, not the people on the street. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Dapel. Earlier in the conversation, you see, you mentioned the disconnect between the Minister of Finance, the central bank governor, and even the president. Because when the minister was summoned at the National Assembly, she said she was not even put in the know that something like this will happen. Why do you think there is disconnect between monetary policy, which is being championed by the CBN, right, and then fiscal policy, which the minister ought to have spearhead? I
think we see that a lot in Nigeria. Government institutions working at cross purposes. For example, see the rifts we saw between the Minister of Transport and the then NPA chairwoman. Yes. We saw the rifts between the Minister of Petroleum and Minister of State for Petroleum, that's Ibecha Kachuku, and the NNPC GMD. So we have seen activities or actions like these in the past. And for me, it's very worrying that as much as some people have advanced the argument that the Minister of Finance has no part in that decision to really redesign that, but she's part of that economic team. And at least, even if she's not going to be called into the room, she should know, she should be given some information at least as regards the next step of with government. But
some say that CBN governor is answerable to the president. He is in charge of monetary policy and directly answerable to the president. Is it that it's a personal grudge between the CBN governor and the minister, or they just don't want to work together for the betterment of the country?
Yeah, I mean, it's a personality battle we see. Even though, of course, we've heard that argument that the CBN governor is answerable directly to the president, yes. But at least the finance minister should have been briefed in some way or form about that policy direction from the CBN. I mean, the president, of course, should be aware. I mean, he gave the approval, but the finance minister should be able...
Because she's in charge of the
and what
policy.
Should follow should be robust information about this new move. I mean, the example he gave about the UK, how very transparent they are with the...
and there was no panic at all.
No panic at all. I mean, one of the arguments the UK gave was, considering the fact that of course, it requires paper to print money, and paper comes from trees. The effect of that redesigning on the climate, they are going to the old notes and the new notes will subside for a time, and they will gradually phase out the old notes. But we don't see that sort of strong argument
in
Nigeria. We just see arguments. But when we investigate these arguments, they don't really hold water. I mean, we saw the EFCC going to arrest BDC operators.
You wonder why?
And the arguments the EFCC people gave was that they're trying to control inflation. How would arresting these... I mean, they just contribute 10%, or let's say 30% of the problem. This larger percentage of the problem are with people in government that have access to these foreign exchange at central bank rates and are able to do round tripping and turn to overnight millionaires and billionaires. So at the end of the day, like they say, you call a dog a bad name so that you can hang it. I mean, these BDC operators are just, unfortunately, going to be scapegoats. And
while the major criminals are
exactly,
somewhere.
Because if the government doesn't really go after these big guys, including the bank CEOs and people in government, this policy would return a very terrible outcome on the economy.
Very sad. Dapel, yeah, let me go to Dapel to ask him, the former CBN governor, former Emir of Kano, he said CBN within 7 years had printed, is it over 20 trillion naira? Can this happen in other climes? And some people are even saying if care is not taken, Nigeria is heading the way of Uganda, Zimbabwe, and others. As an economist, what is your take on what the former CBN governor said?
Well, I don't know the context in which His Highness was speaking. He meant that the CBN printed additional 23 trillion and infused in the economy straight away on top of what is already there. Or the CBN is printing money to replace the ones that are in circulation that are worn out and damaged. If it's the second case, that's fine. But if it's the first case, I don't think that likely that's the case. But in advanced economies, during the financial crisis, there was a monetary policy tool used to, stimulate the economy. It's called QE, quantitative easing. So the central banks will print more money and sell bonds to the general and buy bonds from the general public, like securities, bonds, treasury bills from the public. And as a result of doing that, they have pumped money into the system. But immediately they would find a way to withdraw this money. We've seen that happen since the financial crisis. So they can print money and find a way either through taxes or austerity or selling these to the public again by using interest rates to induce people to part with liquidity in the hope that in the future that will yield some interest for them.
Okay, now with what is happening to the Naira, do you also foresee it becoming like that of Zimbabwe?
No, I don't know. That of Zimbabwe, I don't see it happening that way, and whenever the country in Zimbabwe would stabilize. But you see, in Zimbabwe, what was the situation that you have to wheel more cash in a wheelbarrow to maybe just buy one mugo gari or just buy something. I mean, the value of the currency was worse than hyperinflation. I don't think we're going down that road. I believe there are good people at our central bank, and they are doing their best to maintain price stability.
Okay, but how do you think the Naira can regain its value now, beyond the aesthetics of changing the design?
So let's cut to the chase. The primary function of the central bank is to stabilize prices.
Okay.
Price stability. And the central bank cannot do that if it is not independent. Sometime in April, I shared that thought. The central bank in Nigeria since 1999 has checked the boxes of what the central bank is deemed not independent. So since 1999, our central bank has shown that it is highly influenced by the federal executive branch of government. One is, if the central bank governor is from the same region as the president who appointed him, or the central bank governor really spent 2 terms of 10 years in total, that's a signal that the central bank is not independent. There is high frequency turnout of central bank governors. You have one spend 5 years, spend 4 years, and they keep changing. The only exception is the current one that is 5 years. And that is not healthy for the central banking. You see, if we were following the independence of the central bank and we allow that bank without interference from the federal executive branch, we may have Malam Sanusi Lamido just finishing his 10 years in Professor Soludo finishing his 10 years in 2014, and Sanusi Lamido would have finished his in 2 years from now. Imagine having these economists who are very determined to, do what is right in their own right for the country, and they have ego, they don't want failure to be associated with them. We may have averted the 2 recessions we found ourselves in.
Wow.
And if a president of the country said, do this for me. See, let me tell you one of the problems with a central bank that is not independent. And when you have Beruti change at the same time. When a central bank is not independent, somebody from the federal executive branch, or maybe an aide or a minister, or somebody that has some influence, can go to the CBN and get the dollar through the back door and bring it to Beruti change and sell it. And when they sell it in Beruti change, public officials who stole government money would carry the Naira and come to the Beruti change and buy it no matter the rate. By the way, it's a stolen money, so I don't care the exchange rate. And when they converted these to dollars, they launder them abroad through our banking system and international financial system.
Wow.
In fact, in Grosvenor Square in London alone, Nigerians bought houses with cash, roughly £500 million in 3 years. So they move these monies. Read this book, chapter 6 in this book, A Swamp Full of Dollars, Sidelines and Paramilitaries at Nigeria Well Frontier by Michael P. He talked about high level of kind of corruptions in Nigeria in the chapter 6 of that book.
All right, thank you very much, Dapel. Joseph, in just 30 seconds or thereabout, what do you think should be done to actually revive the Naira?
I think there should be strong emphasis on production.
Okay.
There should also be strong emphasis in creating the necessary conditions to really drive foreign direct investments.
Okay, and we are approaching election. How can government now, checkmate politicians from further devaluing the Naira?
I think the ruling party should begin from itself. Once there is that in-house cleaning, the others out there will learn, and will. I mean, we saw. This is not the first time we're witnessing this at the party primary. When we had party primaries, we saw how there was that demand for dollars because people needed to purchase forms, people needed to buy delegates, and so on and so forth. So APC would need to set that example. No sacred cows. I mean, the president should be thinking of leaving a lasting legacy. No sacred cows. If the central bank governor is part of the problem, it should be sanctioned. If the finance minister...
But if he's helping, he should be encouraged.
Of course, if he's helping,
all right.
encouraged.
Thank you very much, Joseph Ago. This is how far we can take, and we thank you for coming. Dapel, we thank you very much for joining us from London and for your informed perspective on NAIRA redesign. Who wins? Back to you, Nigerians. Who win? That's a wrap on today's program. Thanks for watching, and do join us again for another edition. I'm Hamza Idris. Bye-bye.